Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballava Giradhari Gopi Jana Ballava Giradhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giradhari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jayam Vishnu Par Paramahansa Parvakacharya Satyasri Sriman His Divine Loving Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnu Par Paramahansa Parvakacharya Satyasri Sriman His Divine Loving Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakoi Vaishnavindaki Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Pramshakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktavindaki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sambakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki, Srimati Bhakti Devi Ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachani Nirvishesha Sinyavadi Vasyatya Satani Om Ekanathi Mirandasya Janandana Salakaya Chaksun Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadanmayam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopisa Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute O Mahavadanaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Goratushe Namaha Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this evening, I'm studying the Bhagavad Gita as it is, 6th chapter, Danya Yoga, text 10. Yogī yuñjīta satatam ātmānaṁ rahasi sthitaḥ ekākī yata-cittātmā nirāśīr aparigrahaḥ yogī yuñjīta satatam ātmānaṁ rahasi sthitaḥ ekākī yata-cittātmā nirāśīr aparigrahaḥ yogī yuñjīta satatam ātmānaṁ rahasi sthitaḥ ekākī yata-cittātmā nirāśīr aparigrahaḥ. And the word for the word translation: a transcendentalist or yogi, a transcendentalist, yuñjīta, must concentrate in Krishna consciousness, satatam, constantly, ātmānaṁ, himself by body, mind, and self, rahasi, in a secluded place, sthitaḥ, being situated, ekākī, alone, yata-cittātmā, always careful in mind, nirāśīr, without being attracted by anything else, aparigrahaḥ, free from the feelings of possessiveness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Purport. Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna consciousness means consciously to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or the localized supersoul are also partially Krishna conscious, because the impersonal Brahman is the spiritual ray of Krishna, and supersoul is the all-pervading partial expansion of Krishna. Thus, the impersonalist and a meditator are also indirectly Krishna conscious. A direct Krishna conscious person is the topmost transcendentalist because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. His knowledge of the absolute truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Krishna conscious. Nevertheless, all of these are instructed herein to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuits, so that they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. The first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is called samadhi or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. He should be very careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. And in perfect determination, he should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by feelings of possessiveness. All these perfections and precautions are perfectly executed when one is directly in Krishna consciousness. Because directly Krishna consciousness means self-abnegation, wherein there is very little chance for material possessiveness. Srila Rupa Goswami characterizes Krishna consciousness in this way. Anakshaktasya vishsayan yardam upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate prapanchikataya putya hari sambandhi vastistu Subir parigyago vairagyam palo kartyate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of his relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. This is the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.255 through 256. A Krishna conscious person well knows that everything belongs to Krishna, and thus he is always free from feelings of personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his own personal account. He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from material things because he is always transcendental, and he is always alone, having nothing to do with persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi. Jai. This is another beautiful purport by Srila Prabhupada, where he gives us some depth of understanding into spirituality. And he starts off by explaining that those interested in Brahman realization and the yogis interested in Paramatma realization, they do have a certain degree of Krishna consciousness. So they have a certain level of Krishna consciousness. It was interesting he used that analogy as a ray, because a ray is a very small thing. If you think of a ray in comparison to the sun, it is a small thing because compared to the sun, the ray is insignificant. And so Brahman realization really is lacking in so many things. And at least Paramatma realization, there is some acknowledgement of the Lord in the heart, though it's incomplete. It's incomplete as to all the wonderful qualities that Krishna has. But actually, if you take this and then compare it to other many world religions, and I don't mean to be condescending, but in America, most, and in India as well, a lot of religions are like a business. They go to God for something. I'll be good. I'll give some money to my church, and then God will bless me. In fact, there's a lot of churches in America who make quite a bit of money by preaching this seed donation, where they tell their parishioners or their clergy that you give some money to us, and then God will give you lots more. And so they get very wealthy. They have private jets and big mansions and all kinds of cars. It's quite amazing. But these people that they're just fools and they're cheated, as the Prabhupada says, the cheaters and the cheated. So at least in Brahman realization, it's not a business. They're not going to, they do have the misconception that they're going to merge and become God, but other than that, it has some sense of spirituality, because there is this process to become renounced from material consciousness, to become renounced from the conception of I am this body, to understand I am spirit soul. So in that way, it's quite superior to a lot of other religions, where they actually even believe that their bodies will rise at the end of time, and they'll have the same body that they have now. It's quite interesting. But this the Srila Prabhupada is explaining is by staying on the path, by staying in the process of whatever path they're on, they can make gradual progress. However, this progress is also compared to the difference between taking the stairs or taking an elevator. And if you're going up to the 20th floor and you get in an elevator, you can do it in just a few minutes. But if you're having to take the stairs, it could be quite a difficult trip for anyone. And that's the comparison if you go through the slow, gradual process, starting at Brahman realization. And then after many, many lifetimes, if you don't fall down completely, you can attain yogi realization and go on from there. But this particular process, excuse me, this particular process that Srila Prabhupada has actually, he's created for us, or has set up for us, that is so complete and perfect in itself. And it tells us everything about what to do, what not to do. And he starts it off with the main instruction is always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. And but in this process, he set up this whole program for sadhana bhakti, in which the devotee can think of Krishna all day long. And as they advance in Krishna consciousness, they will begin to dream of Krishna and his devotees as he sleeps at night. And this process involves the Sankirtan movement, because by preaching the Sankirtan movement, getting involved and distributing the books and servicing the temples, we're making facility for other people who are devotees, they just don't know it yet, to come and begin their spiritual life. Srila Prabhupada was once asked by a reporter, how many pure devotees are there like you? And Prabhupada turned to the devotee next to him and he said, how many devotees do we have? And he said, it was about 5,000, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, we have 5,000 pure devotees. Now that seems like a very generous compliment. Prabhupada was complimenting all the devotees as being pure devotees, but we know we're not pure devotees. We're all in the shower, so to speak. We're on the train, but simply because if one is seriously applying themselves to following the instructions of the spiritual master, then they're able to exclude that mercy, that spiritual energy, and attract people. And when someone comes to Krishna consciousness, it's that energy coming from the devotees that's encouraging them, and that develops this faith in them that, wow, there's something here. And just that little bit of faith, they start taking on the process. And they start seriously following the instructions of the spiritual master. And it may be small at first. They may not chant the minimum of 16 rounds a day. It may be, 4 rounds. But as they seriously apply themselves, will take more and more and more. And then Srila Prabhupada, they may even come to surrender into the temple. And Srila Prabhupada, again, this whole program is so perfect for the devotees. The first thing in the morning is a prayer to the spiritual master. And this is what they should be, because there should be a gratitude and respect for the spiritual master. So that's our first prayer of the day. And then there's the glorification of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and everyone else. So this Mangal Artik is such a wonderful, wonderful blessing. Plus, when one goes to Mangal Artik, the whole day becomes auspicious. Prabhupada said, whole day is auspicious. And there's something to be said about this Brahma Murta hour. Quite a lot to be said about the Brahma Murta hour, because just like there's a special month of Kartik every year, there's a special hour every day, and that is the hour and a half before the sun rises. And interesting enough, that most burglaries are done in that time, because a materialist person will want to get as much sleep and as deep a sleep as possible. And that's Brahma Murta. Anything that's done Brahma Murta is more intense. Just like in any devotion that's done in Kartik is more intense. So Brahma Murta is a more intense time of the day. And so it's a special time to be chanting and worshiping, because that intensifies our spiritual life. So from the Mangal Artik, there's the prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev. There's the prayers to obeisances to the devotees, the prayers to Tulsi. It's such a perfectly beautiful process. And then the chanting of the japa. And it starts the day so perfectly. The most important thing we do in our spiritual life is chanting our japa. It's one of the few things that the spiritual master is asking for a commitment to at the time of an initiation. And so this chanting cannot be underestimated, the importance. So after the japa, after the is then the greeting of the deities and the Srimad Bhagavatam class. And what's kind of is also very interesting how Srila Prabhupada has set up this Srimad Bhagavatam class is that he likes an assortment of devotees giving classes, senior devotees, because they can give different realizations, different perspectives on these spiritual concepts, to help us deeper our understanding. And after the class, it's so wonderful when devotees ask questions, because this is like churning the ocean of nectar. This is churning the nectar pot. You never know what wonderful understandings will come out when devotees actually ask serious questions. It's very enlivening to the devotees. So, and just by listening to somebody who's enlivened, we become enlivened. This is the special association process too, is by hearing from someone who's very serious and very dedicated to their practice of Krishna consciousness, then we get inspired to take up this, become a little more serious, a little more inspired. And Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, is the literal incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we learn so much about Krishna through the Srimad Bhagavatam, as well as we learn about his relationship with his devotees, which is extraordinary. It's nothing that we really have experience of in this material world. So then, of course, after that is taking prasadam. And taking prasadam is one of the easiest ways just to become Krishna conscious. It's such a wonderful blessing when that we have such easy access to a simple process of taking prasadam, honoring prasadam. And then there's the service. And the service is supposed to be done according to what our nature is, what we're good at, whatever it is, we offer the results to Krishna. We don't We don't attach ourselves to any of the results. And from there, we learn a lot about our relationship with Krishna and our relationship with other devotees. And of course, then there's the evening program. So we have the Bhagavad Gita class. Well, these are the words spoken right from Krishna. These are his instructions directly to us through his dear friend Arjuna. And Srila Prabhupada would call this the ISKCON sandwich, because this should be our steady diet, this ISKCON sandwich, that we have this. And if we take this up very seriously, because there has to be, we have to have a taste, a transcendental taste. And because there's nothing like it, there's nothing that can replace it. No one can take any pills or drugs to have the same effect. No vacation or nothing you can attain in the material world can give you the taste that devotees are getting through devotional service. And so by ardently and seriously applying ourselves day after day after day, gradually, there is a rise above the modes of material nature, of passion, goodness, and ignorance, a rise above bodily conception, a rise above the miseries, being affected by the miseries of the material world. And so gradually, the heart becomes softened from the steel frame that it is in, which is enclosed. It's been described as being enclosed in an iron frame cage. So as it becomes lighter, the heart becomes lighter, not only just with the brightness, but also with the weight. Because the devotee who's becoming enlightened, becoming spiritualized, also becoming happier. And this is obvious from their association. And when we come into contact with somebody who is a pure devotee, it melts our hearts, and we immediately become very much inclined towards them, and very much happy to be in their association. And so this is our process. We start in this. We may start as kanista adhikaris, and so once we rise above the pettiness of kanista adhikari, we go into the madhyama adhikari stage, where we seriously apply and learn and develop, and as time goes on, a devotee then comes to the uttama adhikari, and he sees Krishna everywhere. He sees Krishna in everything. And just like Prahlad, and when his terrible, horrendous, demoniac father said, "Do you see Krishna in this pillar?" Prahlad did see Krishna in that pillar, and Prahlad said yes, and that was the end of Hiranyakasipu. So the Uttamadhikari is not affected by anything. They are completely fixed on pleasing Radha and Krishna. So the purpose of sadhana bhakti is to awaken the bhav in the living entity's heart. And clearly, bhav is our goal for devotional service. Within the stage of regulative principles of devotional service, the bhav and executing devotional service causes the bhav. We have to come to Sthitaḥ. It enters, Sthitaḥ is not a material mode. It enters the devotee's heart due to the mercy of the Supreme Lord. It's not a material mode of goodness, but the Lord's internal potency, whose function is to revive the living entity's dormant love for Krishna. And like a seed needs sunlight to grow. You know, you can keep seeds in a package and they won't do a thing. But if you give them some water and sunlight, then they will start sprouting. So this is sunlight is compared to the touch of the Lord. It comes, it descends. It is not something we can just achieve on our own, something we just happen upon. It is a special energy of bhav that begins to reveal pure love in the devotee's heart. Srila Rupa Goswami defines Bhava Bhakti as follows: Sura Sattva Vishātmā Prema Suryam Tu Yamya Bhak Ruchi Bhischitta Masrinya Kviraso Bhava Uchate. And this is from the Majjalila, Chaitanya Charitamrita Majjalila. When devotional service is situated on the transcendental platform of pure goodness, it is like a ray of sunlight of love for Krishna. At such time, devotional service causes the heart to be softened by various tastes, and one is then situated in bhav. This is our goal. According to Rupa Goswami, Sura Sattva is composed of the Lord's Samvit and Haladini potencies. These are his internal potencies. And this Samvit is a congenitive, it's the knowledge-giving potency. So this is energy Krishna gives the devotee so the devotee can understand who Krishna is and appreciate the wonderfulness of Krishna. The Haladini is the devotional potency, so that the devotee is able to serve the Lord in true devotional mood. So the Lord's own cognitive potency deepens into the heart, and it empowers us to fully manifest blissful love of Godhead. And when these two divine energies combine in the heart, one can begin to fully relish Krishna as the supreme object of love. This is Bhava Bhakti, the awakening of love of Godhead. And the second characteristic of this of these energies coming into the heart and of the Bhava Bhakti entering the heart is it softens the heart, so that the heart can have a taste and relish association with the Lord, because in its conditional state, the heart is so hard it cannot appreciate some of the finer delicacies of Krishna consciousness. And the Srimad Bhagavatam describes this in the second canto, third chapter 24. Certainly the heart is steel framed, which in spite of chanting the holy name with concentration does not change when ecstasy takes place and tears fill the eyes and hairs stand on end. So if we're not feeling these things, it's because our hearts are steel framed. And of course, there's a prayer of the Shashastika which says, "Oh my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name?" So in the Nectar Devotion, Srila Prabhupada, he says, in this connection, there is a statement in the Tantras that ecstasy is the first symptom of pure love for the personality of Godhead. And in that stage, one is sometimes found shedding tears or shivering. Of course, the devotees are not put on display these symptoms. A serious devotee who's making advances does not display these symptoms. They keep them very private. It's very personal for them. Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain that bhav, or ecstasy, is the first symptom of pure love of Godhead, and then it goes to pure prema eventually. So there's three important tastes that arrive when this bhav starts to arrive, and that's the prapti abhilas, which is the desire to achieve Krishna. And the second one is anukulya abhilas, the desire to please Krishna with various services. And the sodhard abhilas, the desire to be close at heart with Krishna. So these things then intensify to a great deal. When bhav arises, it permeates our consciousness to such an extent that it becomes one with the mind. The mind then and bhav are one, and just like the iron rod in the fire, we put the iron rod in the fire, and it gets very, very hot. And in that way, it acts just like the fire. It can do the same type of things that the fire is doing. It has the same effect. So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada was talking about that in order to achieve this samadhi, that there's certain other things that we should do. And he was pretty much quoting right out of the Upadeshamrita, is that a devotee should live in a secluded place. But this doesn't mean we live in the forest by ourselves. And Mayapur, there was a devotee who told Prabhupada he wanted to just chant in the fields by himself. He didn't want to do any service or anything. Prabhupada said, sure. After some time, he was seen with a cigarette, smoking, and in some female associations. So it wasn't really to his benefit. Association with devotees can be very challenging, but it's also very purifying, because it's basically a mirror. See, because you can't see, if you see a fault, we know we have this fault. So if we're seeing a fault, we should look at ourselves. And it should be very careful to accept everything that's favorable and to reject unfavorable conditions that affect our realizations. And we all know what those things are. Definitely only eat prasadam. And don't associate with people with worldly consciousness. Don't go to movies. Don't read mundane books and things. It's like putting brakes on when you're trying to get somewhere. It slows down everything. And one should not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle us. Because the entanglement is then it's more identification with the body and thinking that we're possessing something, we're ownership of something. Even though we don't take on possessiveness, we care nicely for Krishna's things. It was a big problem in some of our temples, is that the cars, they were Krishna's cars, so nobody really took very good care of them. And they discovered, well, we have to come at this with a different consciousness. We can't just use something and acknowledge, yes, it's Krishna's, but we have a part to take responsibility in it too. So we don't want to become distracted in any extra way, but we also learn to use things in Krishna's service, use them properly in Krishna's service. And Srila Prabhupada gave us this example in so many ways. He was the first sannyas to take an airplane trip, go across the world. This was an amazing, amazing thing. It was at 70 years old. It was astounding that he had done this. And it was a perfect example, because how else could people learn about Krishna consciousness? How else, even if you had the book, how could you appreciate the potency of these words or this process unless you could have an example? And he used himself as the example. He took himself off to all parts of the world to spread this potency, to spread this movement, which has amazing effects, and we've seen amazing effects all over the world because of this Krishna consciousness. So I'm going to end a little early today because I had a couple emergencies come up. I hope you forgive me for that. But if there are any questions, we'll get to them.
Hare Krishna, if you have any questions, please unmute and ask. Or write in the comments box.
All righty. Thank you so much.
You're busy. There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for allowing me to give class. All
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.